Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo saranto suchedoye alahadi samyao sanpatoshe. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even through billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Okay. Venerable Master, Dharma friends, welcome to our Sutra lecture today. My name is Heng Sure. It's Sunday, January 16th, here in Queensland, Australia. It is Saturday night, January 15th, the Ides of January in California, where another half of our community is watching and listening to the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Flower Garland Sutra, 10 stages chapter. We have finished the prose portion today. We will finish it today and begin our investigation of the verses. So to get ourselves going, let's do an invocation. Here it is. This is a request for the invisible but very real Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and Dharma protectors who follow the sutra throughout time and space. And if we're sincere in our request that they draw near and christen and bless this assembly, then I hope they will respond. We do it in Mandarin. The translation is down below. You're welcome to join in. Sa. One more time. We're going to invite the banjo back 2 more times during the lecture. One is we're going to do another invocation, so to speak. Janice Ian, songwriter and creator, producer, talent, genius, created a song for the pandemic that arrived to her, and it's called Better Times Will Come, and we'll be singing that later on as a wish that better times will come, in mindful of the devastation of COVID-19 going through the world. And then at the end, we're going to transfer our merit with the mantra given to us by Medicine Buddha, and it's our Mahayana Hanchuan Fojiao, the Chinese tradition of the Mahayana. It's our power tool against illness of all kinds. So invite people to transfer their merit and learn that Sanskrit mantra to carry it with you. It's got a real energy. So the one tune goes like this. And the other one goes. Like that. So we'll be using a variety of sounds and intentions to move us forward through our sutra today. And we got one more here that we've been practicing here in Australia, and I think I'm going to continue when I get back to the U.S. We call it acknowledgement of country, and the idea is that we current 21st century folks are standing on the shoulders of giants, so to speak. We are just the next group of humans here on this land. And this is an acknowledgement of the first group of humans on this land, the Kombumerri people. In Australia, they divide indigenous folks through language groups because the spread is not geographical, it's cultural, social, through language. So the Ugambi language group practice their spiritual connections to land and to all creation, all living beings, here in this location for thousands of years. And today we acknowledge them as the traditional custodians. With gratitude that we share this land today, with sorrow for the costs of that sharing, and with hope that we can move together to a place of justice and partnership together. We acknowledge their wisdom and their elders, past, present, and emerging. Now that being said, I would like to include an acknowledgement of living beings, other cultures, the fact that individuals like this fellow, it's a male kangaroo who with his buddy was enjoying our grass yesterday. And we can acknowledge the other humans who are here, but it seems that it's rare that we extend that compassion to the other species who will be here when we're gone, for sure. That's the reality. We're now, there's good news. There's good news on the bilby front, by the way. I am a member of an organization called Save the Bilby Fund. Bilbies are these small marsupials. They're not quite as big as rabbits in most cases, and they used to be as common in Australia as squirrels in America. But because they were pretty defenseless, they almost vanished. And one of the moves of the Save the Bilby Foundation, which is located here in Queensland, is to get the stores in Australia around Easter time to make and sell chocolate bilbies, not chocolate Easter bunnies. And so they were successful this year. Woolworths and other places marketed their first chocolate bilbies and put them on the shelves for Aussie kids Aussie parents to buy for their kids. So, chocolate bilbies for Easter. Any of you Aussie friends listening, please let's patronize those stores that produce and sell chocolate bilbies. So, yeah, bilbies are cute. They've got ears like our kangaroo friend here and this long tail. And they're mostly nocturnal. You don't see them, but feral cats was the number one thing that has wiped them out recently. So this the Save the Bilby Foundation has a reservation. Speaking of which, since we've got it's on people's minds, not Ed Sheeran, let's see. Save the Bilbies Fund. Here we go. I want people to find out. SaveTheBilbyFund.org.au is the place to go to support their work. It's a couple courageous naturalists and friends of the bilby who have they've created a paddock out in Queensland. Here's there's a feral cat. Those are the folks, and December 10th cutoff date for Christmas online shop orders. They are working to create a safe haven for bilbies to live their lives out. Here's a bilby. There we are. There's a bilby. And they're related to the bandicoots. They're nocturnal omnivorous marsupials. So anyway, the Save the Bilby Foundation, they're a baby bilby, a bilby baby. Here we are. Would appreciate any support or awareness that we can provide for folks to, this is the bilbies range. All right, there we go. So in the spirit of the Ugambe language group, who have emerging elders with wisdom that we support, likewise, all living beings deserve that same amount of respect. They have bilby toys, t-shirts, giftwares, clothing, books, and DVDs. So any amount of support, I'm sure, is much appreciated. Okay, we are in our turning point in our sutra. We've finished with the prose today, last paragraph, and we're talking about how the Bodhisattva, who is a student at this point, still learning his, just beginning his study of Bodhisattva practices and vows. He or she is, they've finished their study of the content. They've absorbed all the lessons, and now they're getting the rewards of the studies they've made, and things happen. Things happen to bodhisattvas in training at each step, at each stage of the 10 stages. And we've been calling it boilerplate. People know the word boilerplate, meaning if you have a form letter, there's certain language in the form letter that you just repeat automatically, kind of like you stamp it on the bottom. You don't have to think about it, you just repeat it. So each of the stages has boilerplate text, which is what the things that happen to each different step. So first stage, second stage, third stage, up to 10. Think about kids going through grade school. First grade, second grade, third grade. They're things that you're able to do. You read different books in the library. You attend different assemblies in the auditorium. Same with the bodhisattva training. So the last stage of the bodhisattvas, the last step of the bodhisattva's first stage includes these things that happen. Right there. Here it is. I'll bring it up a little bigger. And I'm going to read this part, and then, there we go. A little bigger. There it is. I'll read it first in Chinese, and then we'll look at it in English. Here we go. 既出家已，亲行精进，于一念请，得百三昧，得见百佛，知百佛身力，能动百佛世界，能过百佛世界，能照百佛世界，能教化百世界众生，能祝寿百劫，能知前后继，各百劫事，能入百法门，能实现百神，于一一身，能施百菩萨，一位眷属。若一菩萨殊胜愿力，自在实现，过于实数。百劫、千劫、百千劫，乃至百千亿，哪有他劫不能数之。Here it is. So thereupon, after leaving home, he, she diligently cultivates with vigor. Within the space of a thought, I'll just say he, but if you want to substitute the female pronoun, perfectly fine. He attains 100 samadhis. He comes to see 100 Buddhas. He's able to know 100 Buddha's spiritual powers. He's able to quake 100 Buddha lands. He's able to go beyond 100 Buddha lands. He's able to illumine 100 Buddha lands. He's able to teach and transform the living beings of 100 worlds. He's able to live for 100 kalpas. He's able to know the boundaries of before and afterwards, the events of 100 kalpas for each. He's able to enter 100 dharma doors. He's able to manifest 100 bodies. With everybody, he is able to manifest 100 bodhisattvas. With every body, that's not everybody, with every body, he is able to manifest 100 bodhisattvas as his retinue. If he employs a specially supreme power of bodhisattva's vows to manifest at ease, he surpasses that number. In 100,000 kalpas, up to and including 100,000 million nayutas of kalpas, the number could not be counted or known. Wow. There we go. So, first stage bodhisattva, just a beginner, 9 stages to go, but look. Remember last week we found out that the bodhisattva could leave home should he choose to do so, and if he can really cultivate hard, he leaves the 5 desires behind, and using the Tathagata's teaching, leaves home and studies the way. And look what happens. He leaves home, he cultivates, and then, check this out, this is the kicker, right? In the space of a thought, within one flicker in his mind, hundreds of things happen. Samadhis arrive, Buddhas appear, he sees their spiritual abilities. He can make earthquakes happen. And everybody goes, wait, is this a Marvel comic book? What? Why do you want to make Buddha lands quake? We've explained that in the past, that they talk about this, one of the features of accomplishment at the level of your nature. When you're past, this is not a thought, right? This is not an idea, it's not a doctrine, it's not a policy. This is an event of human/Buddha nature, the same as rain falling, the same as lightning coming out of the sky, the same as the earth turning from day to night and back to day. Events that happen on the level of the Buddha nature shake things. It's not harmful, they say. 6 kinds of earthquakes. 3 that have to do with movement, 3 that have to do with sound, they say. So this morning, early this morning, there was a thunderstorm that passed through here in southeastern Queensland, and oh my goodness, just boom, and it was so loud, and the rain just drenched down, and my thoughts immediately went to the birds. I was thinking, does that, I've watched close up, I've watched birds cling to a branch, and they're hanging on with the strength of their claws, and that branch is moving, and they're, at some point, to have that thunder and lightning. So when the Bodhisattva finishes the work of this first stage, he can make the earthquake his accomplishment. Now, how do you understand that? How did, within any kind of scientific explanation, how does that make sense? My take is, I haven't read this anywhere, so I can't verify. But if you look around the edges of history, you kind of pick up one corner and look under it, history recording things, you can find phenomenon that go on that seem unrelated, but if you look from the lens of the Buddha Dharma, you could stretch a theory that says humans are part of nature. The Chinese science is one of those places that records things for 2,500 years now, more. And Chinese science talks about Tian Di Zhen, earth, the sky, the heavens, and humanity are related, intimately related. And what happens to one affects the others. Okay, so you also look around folklore and you hear stories. What do they say in folklore? They say when there's a war, for 7 years, the agricultural cycles around a place where there was war are disrupted. The common saying is crops don't grow for 7 years after a war. And this is, looking not just at events in Northern Europe or Western Europe in the 20th century. No, it's talking about warfare from, in the West we talk about, the Peloponnesian Wars and on up. In China, they've been clocking the wars since the Zhou dynasty. And they say that when humanity creates our special disaster called a war, humans out killing other humans, that nature takes a hit, so to speak. Nature responds. So, okay, so we've got disasters make a negative result. What about wholesome events? What about the good that humans do? What is another kind of mass event? Whenever, in my theory, this is, I guess we can't escape our karma, right? So when I think about this theory, what comes to my mind is the University of Michigan football stadium. And the Oval in Ann Arbor, Michigan, have this giant football stadium because football is big in Michigan, like in other states in the United States, like in Australia, like in England, like in Ireland, everywhere, Serbia. Football is big, no matter whether you call it soccer or football. So American football in Ann Arbor, especially when it's the big game is the rivalry between Michigan and Ohio State. My dad and my brother and my mom were all Ohio State alumni. The Buckeyes down in Columbus. I can sing the Ohio State fight song. Fight, fight, Ohio State, men of scarlet and gray, women of scarlet and gray. So I was raised partisan Ohio State. However, just 30 minutes away from Toledo, you cross the Michigan border and things are different. And it's gold blue. Michigan is big on everybody's radar. And that rivalry is fierce. So why does this come to mind? Why are you hearing about football rivalries in the Midwest? Because I recall walking with my family towards the Oval, towards the big football stadium in Ann Arbor on the day of the big game. Ohio State was visiting Ann Arbor, and the football stadium was full. I think it seats 80,000 maybe. There were certainly 80,000 people there. And the energy of lust is not the word, the energy of desire, I guess. Desire right at the edge of turning into anger, right? It's just before violence was so thick in the air that I, as a 12-year-old kid walking up, with my dad and my mom and my brother and my sister, I registered that. It made an impact in my 12-year-old mind that there was so much energy that was raw and could have gone violent easily, that I experienced the power of human consciousness when it's focused together towards chaos, and I imagined how it would be if it was towards goodness. What would you do with 80,000 people that you could get everybody in harmony? Maybe sing a Michael Jackson song or something like that. I don't know what it would take, but the football crowd was right at the edge of chaos, right at the edge of disharmony, and the power of that many people shouting on two sides, "Go Blue," and my dad's saying was "Dirty Michigan." He always would stand up and shout "Dirty Michigan" at some point during the game. He was proud of that, and just to demonstrate his partisan side. So, okay, my point is what? My point is to say that when we quake 100 Buddha lands, could it be that the human third of the heaven, earth, the Tiandi, or in human earth and humanity, humans, earth, and sky, when we do something that is called sheng, the sublime virtue, such as finishing the first bodhisattva stage, at that point we can move the earth. There's my conclusion. Is that possible? Don't know. Think about it. Okay, it's my theory. I'd appreciate anybody chipping in. Other events that humans do that are so good that heaven and earth respond. I need more evidence for my theory. So, he can shine on 100 Buddha lands. He can teach and transform the living beings of 100 worlds. Now, with the amount of ignorance he has removed from his nature. That's what's going on, right? It's not that he got anything. He let go of what he had before, which was covering. Now he's uncovered at the bodhisattva stage. He can live for 100 kalpas. His lifespan expands. He knows the boundaries of past and future and the things that happen in both. So he is now able to predict the future. Look at that, right? Able to enter 100 Dharma doors, entering Dharma doors. There's no door actually entered. What that means is he's able to master the methods of practice, 100 of them. Able to make 100 bodies appear. And each of those bodies has bodhisattvas around it. How amazing, right? So this is all the first stage, what he's able to do. Then it says, this is the boilerplate text. If the bodhisattva uses vows to say, I'm going to go all the way to Buddhahood, these numbers don't stand, that he can multiply it. So you get multiples of these numbers, exponential. In 100,000 eons, up to 100,000 million nayutas of eons. You couldn't know how many there are. Okay, there we go. Man, oh man. What can you say? There we go. Let's do the speaker. There we go. So, okay, that's boilerplate. Now, what happens next is second stage, and all of those things that happen again, only more. There's an exponential growth in each stage of those various things. The number of Buddhas they see, the number of samadhis they enter, the number of earthquakes that happen, and they're harmless, mind you. So Yeah, pretty amazing. But if we track it back, what did this bodhisattva do in order to get here that is worthy of phenomenon like this happening? These are in the commentary that we look at to explain the sutra is by the Tang Dynasty master, Master Chengguan. His name is Qingliang Guoshi, National Master, Clear and Cool, also known as Avatamsaka Bodhisattva. And his commentary to that section that we just read is Guo. These are fruitions. These are the fruits of his work. And it's called the stage of happiness. And it's the first of 10. Actually, the first stage is, given all 10, it's kind of preliminary. When you get to number 2, the bodhisattva, number 1 is about giving, and it's called the stage of happiness because the bodhisattva learns to give. But in terms of the big picture, he's still just preparing. This is just plowing the ground. Second stage has to do with precepts. The bodhisattva really changes his behavior in accord with wisdom, and he learns about cause and effect. And then in the third stage, it's about patience. And learning about patience, the bodhisattva gets psychic abilities, psychic powers, and the sutra describes them in incredible detail, and so forth, 4, 5, 6, all the way up. So each of these stages has the corresponding fruition that happens, the rewards that come from this work. And gee whiz. Most of all, the character of this first stage is giving, is the happiness that comes from giving. And we've illustrated that in numerous ways along the road. So, let's take a look back. What do we got? Go. 尔时金刚藏菩萨于冲宣起义而说颂曰 At that time, Bodhisattva Vajratreasury, wishing to restate his meaning, chanted in melodic verse. There he is. Okay? Oh. Now, big change. And we've talked about this. I don't know if everybody recalls, we were just at the 10th stage and when we did the last verses. And I think I told my story, but I'll tell it again, by golly. I studied Sanskrit at Cal, at Berkeley, and it's my only class that I took an incomplete. There were various reasons for it. At that point, that semester, I was thinking about leaving my major of Asian studies and transferring into medicine. I thought I wanted to be a doctor. I thought I could be a doctor. And I discovered that I didn't have it. Didn't have the background for the science side of it. I could do the medicine part. I enjoyed the medicine part. I volunteered at the local emergency room and could handle the blood and the trauma, but I entered my first pre-med class was biology at UC Berkeley. And it was the day of slide rules. Calculators hadn't arrived yet. Slide rules. People had a slide rule. Remember slide rules? They're probably entirely gone. Anybody, if you have a slide rule, it's in your drawer. It's in the back of your drawer, probably covered in dust. So I took the first pre-med biology class, and it was a lecture theater at UC Berkeley. not a classroom, it was a theater. Big sloping seats. The professor, who was not a professor but a TE, a TA, a teaching assistant. We didn't even merit a full professor. We had a teaching assistant. And the teaching assistant down on the stage was about this big. And he had, at the blackboard. And I was up at the third row from the top, looking at a TV monitor. There were TV monitors, because we were up in the cheap seats, up in the peanut gallery. And I was surrounded by, and I remarked, I was surrounded by Chinese undergraduates who could use their slide rules so fast that they were smoking. The slide rules were putting off sparks because they were so fast. I couldn't operate a slide rule. I was so far behind. And all of the pre-med students heading for becoming doctors were Chinese, except the ones who weren't were Indian and Chinese. Undergraduates, and I was a graduate in Asian studies, sitting up here going, I think I want to be a doctor. And these people figuring out their formulas and their answers to questions that I couldn't, I didn't last in basic biology. So that was, you would see the kind of confusion in my mind at the time, and why I was also enrolled in a Sanskrit class. And the point of the story is that Professor Robert Goldman, who basically wrote the textbook for teaching undergraduate Sanskrit, was the professor. Professor Goldman was just terrific. He was so much fun, and he loved teaching Sanskrit, and as a result, you could just fall in love with it with him. He was just the best at it, and he enjoyed undergraduates, and so this is the basic Sanskrit. And in the process of waking us up to the joys of learning Sanskrit, Professor Goldman invited Pandit Bhatta to come and do a class. So Pandit Bhatta was somebody that Professor Goldman had studied in India in the training class for, and I'll get this wrong, but I believe it was Shaivite Shiva, disciples of Shiva, Shaivite Pandits, who kept alive the Brahmanic tradition of memorizing the Vedas. That's where Professor Goldman had received some of his training. And the idea was that in this tradition, it belongs to the Brahmins, the top class. This is what they were responsible for, was to keep the Vedas alive. And the Vedas, of course, were these ancient. If there's any book in the world that's older than Buddha Sutras, it may be the Vedas. The Vedas, when Prince Siddhartha was, deciding that before he knew that he wanted to leave home and investigate his mind, he was involved in Brahmanic studies, although his family had to do with the Brahmins, but the prince himself was a Kshatriya, the second caste. So they worshipped at temples where the Vedas were memorized. That tradition is still alive in the world today. It's one of the things that Brahmins are meant to do, along with bringing up the sun every day, making sure that the sun rises, the Brahmins have that duty to keep the sun regular. So, okay. So, is Jin Chuan Shi, do you have a note for me? Can you verify that Professor, I don't know who the Pandits, where they came from. Pandit Bhatta was sent by his teacher at the request of Professor Goldman. He would have been Bob Goldman's classmate. And Pandit Bhatta came and spent a semester in Berkeley teaching and doing his duty to keep the Vedas alive. How did they do it? They did it by human memory. The power of the carbon-based memory inside the human body, whether it's in the head or shin or wherever you point to it. That was the tool that the Pandits, the chanters of the Vedas, used to memorize huge volumes of text. Just thick books had been committed. That's how you advanced in the school, was by memorizing yet another volume of the Vedas or the supporting Brahmanic literature. So, mind you, in the process, these young men, and it was, I think, entirely men, I believe, they were celibate. They ate Brahmanic food, which is sattvic. They couldn't eat onions and garlic. The pungent plants. They didn't eat rajasic or tamasic foods. There's two kinds of foods that they eat sattvic foods. I don't know how that translates into Chinese, sorry. So, anyway, Pandit Bhatta showed up in class. There he was, wearing his white robes. And I remember Professor Goldman prepared a cloth and said, "Here you are, Panditji." Popped him up on a desk. So Pandit Bhatta crossed his legs on the desk. And the first thing he did was chant praise of Sanskrit. In praise of Sanskrit. It's a verse that before you recite the sacred texts of the Brahmins, what do? You do what we do when we say, Namo Da Fang Guang Fo Hua Yan Jing Hua Yan Hai Wei Fo Pu Sa Wu Shang Shen Shen Wei Miao Fa. We do the same for our texts, but that's what Pandit Bhatta did. And the praise of Sanskrit. And then he began. And the first thing he said was, "Bob, what shall I chant?" And Professor Goldman said, "Well, Panditji, whatever you prefer, you know." So he said, "I think I will chant from the Rig Veda, you know." And so he started chanting. Om Namo Shivaya Handamanam Paratipatanda Taritaya, and on, you know, Om Namo Bhagavate Vaisajya Guru Vaidurya Prabha Radaya. And he just went on, and 10 minutes passed, and 20 minutes passed, and a half hour passed, and Bob Goldman was just beaming, because he's like, see, look at him go, you know. Pandit Bhatta went on and on and on, effortlessly, and he was in his element. He loved it. This is what he did. He'd been trained, no big deal, you know. They trained to do this, not just to keep it going for a long time, but to keep the text in human memory. So, you know, we American grad students were like, how is that possible? What in the world? How could you do such a thing? How many among us have 2 poems to recite from memory? Oh my goodness. So how impressive that was to this day, you know. And at one point, Professor Goldman said, "Very good, very, very good. Thank you, Panditji. And you can stop there." And so the Pandit did not stop. He had to get to the right ending of the chapter, otherwise it's disrespectful. So then at the end, if I'm not mistaken, he transferred the merit in the Brahmanic way. He said, "This is not so simple." He said, you know, we now give the benefits of this to the planets, to the sun, the moon, to humanity, to the supervising gods, and, you know, may all beings be blissful and happy. So, something I hadn't seen before. Now, I hadn't met Master Hua at this point. I hadn't met my teacher. I didn't know that my teacher also had a memory like this, and could and did recite at great length. The first time I ran into that, Master Hua, was in 1985 in Vancouver, at Gold Buddha Monastery, when Shifu recited Song of Enlightenment. All 63 verses took him 20-some minutes. And we had the same reaction, we disciples sitting there on the floor while Shifu was reciting. We hadn't heard anybody do 20 minutes, 25 minutes of anything like that, except Pandit Bhatta. And Master Hua, when he finished, says, he says, 累死我也. He said, you're going to tire me out, tire me to death. Ha. And he said, don't you know that I memorized 11 medical texts? And as kind of the subset of my memory work, he also memorized all the Confucian classics and could recite them at the drop of a wooden fish. He had them. And the power of, so what are the conclusions? One is, boy, the human mind's powerful. And now, mind you, come to think of it, there's this program called Tong Du Jing, and we happen to have an Tong with us right now. Yeah, Tong Du Jing. In China and in Taiwan, there's this wonderful program where young girls memorize 弟子规, 圣人训, 手烧屉, 此经信, 反而重, 而亲人, 有余力, 此学文. Now here at Gold Coast Dharma Realm, young people have been memorizing Di Zigui, right? Is that correct? I won't ask if present company is able to do it, embarrass her, but yeah. So this program of children learning to recite sutras is very much alive in China and Taiwan, Hong Kong, places like that. Here in Australia, where kids, before they pollute their minds with what we pollute our minds with, are given texts to memorize, and they don't necessarily understand them at the start, but they can recite them. And they sing them, and it's great. So that's a really happy thing. Master Hua was of the last generation of Confucian scholars trained in the traditional way, which was memory. You memorized. So I remember kids in my background were taught Thanatopsis. Well, in a Australian childhood, what were you trained to memorize? In Britain, was there things in texts? I wandered lonely as a clod. Keats and Shelley and Robert Burns. Some hay meat and cannot eat, and some hay those that want it. But we hay meat and we can eat, and so the Lord be thanked. Indeed, so Scottish, Robbie Burns. Yes. Okay. All right, lovely. So we haven't lost it all. I wonder if, does this replace can you commit it to this memory? The memory in your phone is, apparently somebody said, and I believe this is the case, they said that the computing power that it took to send, was it the Apollo spacecraft to the moon, was 1/3 of the computing power in your cell phone. So, yeah. Okay, we don't memorize anymore, but imagine if we did. Here was Pandit Bhatta singing, and the point, that's one point, was that we don't memorize much anymore, and so the memorization ability, the memorizable strength of the human mind is something we pretty much have stopped exploring, stopped asking about. The second point is that Pandit Bhatta sang. He had a tune. That he sang his Vedas to. And the melody we ask about, the melody helped, he said. That it was deliberate. It wasn't simple recitation. It was chanting. And he chanted the verses. And the Vedas, as they appeared on the page, were meant to be chanted, apparently. So I think it's because they go down easier and they stay memorized longer if you synchronize it to melody and to heartbeat. When you locate the recitation in your heart and your lungs, the melody is the lungs, the rhythm is your heart, it comes back because bum-bum, regular, bum-bum. We identify with our mother's heartbeat, and the sound of her voice is probably the first thing we hear in the womb. And then those powerful identities, we are that. That is the first thing we know, is that something's near us is going bum-bum, bum-bum, bum-bum. And the regular rhythm of inhale, exhale through sleeping at night, slowing down and then getting up, and when you wash your face, that cold water changes the heartbeat and the breathing and all of those things, the part of embodying our identity. So here is, so you get the point, what I'm suggesting is that when we get to this, it originally was chanted. So at that time, Bodhisattva Vajra Treasury, wishing to restate his meaning, chanted in melodic verse. And look what we have here. We have one version of it, which was not the first one. It's the Chinese version. It was the second one. We have a third version. Probably not the last one, we hope. I'm sure there's a Japanese version, Korean version, although they mostly use the Chinese. So now we have it in English. You're looking at history. We're peering back through the mist of millennia at a text that has been in human knowledge for these thousands of years. And it has transformed into different phonemes, different syntax, different representation on the page. It went from Hanzi to alphabet, but the mind that put it in space from the start is the same mind that conceived of it in Chinese and is currently coming to grips with it in English. So, how interesting. How do we get it to work? If this were a recipe, the question would be, how do we make something delicious? How do we cook it so you can eat it and get the nutrition from it? How do we translate 若人及众善 into nutritious wisdom? Nutrients for our wisdom. How do we do that? Should there be people who do good deeds? That's what we're dealing with. We want to put that into our human experience, chew it up, digest it, and get the wisdom from it. That's the goal. So, I'm going to suggest that music helps. A melody helps. We're hampered by the reality of English being an inflected language, not a tonal language. So look at the difference in length of lines. When you want to make this go bump, 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 it's a challenge. And there are 46 verses, 46 strophes, 46 quatrains here. And there was one here. Let's see here. Which one was it? I was looking at. There's one that is just perfect for chanting. If you can find it. I guess we'll wait till it comes up. Even that is out of meter. So the Chinese has the advantage of being what? Sorry for that scrolling. It's regular beats. Let's do the 4. Let's do 4. Okay, we'll do 4. Here we go. 若人即众山，具足 白金发，供养天人尊，随顺慈悲道，心界极广大，只要一清净，为求佛智慧，发慈无上心，尽一切之力，其一无所谓，成就诸佛法，救摄群生众，唯得大慈悲，其转生法轮，严禁佛国度，发慈最胜心。Okay, what is it? Our commentator, Master Chung Guan, tells us that the first section here is about establishing the bodhisattva on the first stage. It's interesting. First it's 住, they say, 他住在出欢喜地. He establishes himself on the first ground of happiness. What follows after is what he learns in order, the things that he learns. But here he's kind of getting settled in, establishing his bona fides for being here. And I was anticipating that the first of the verses was going to be all about the trouble that it took to get Vajra Treasury Bodhisattva to even teach. Recall, we commented on that at length. At the start, Vajra Treasury said, "No, I can't teach you. This is too subtle, it's too special. People are going to disbelieve it, they're going to slander it. Not a good thing. So, sorry, no," he said, "not going to teach it." Oh, Moon of Liberation Bodhisattva and all the gathered bodhisattvas who saw the Buddha's light and came flying in from directions north, south, east, west, intermediate, above and below. Disappointed. Oh, come on, you got to teach. We're able to hear it. We're not going to misbehave, they said. Through Moon of Liberation, who was their spokesperson. Vajra Treasury Bodhisattva said, "No, sorry, no, too subtle." They went back and forth multiple times. The Buddha spoke up. The Buddha said, "Go ahead, it's okay, don't worry, they can handle it," he said, essentially. So, Moon of Liberation, Vajra Treasury Bodhisattva followed the Buddha's instructions. He wouldn't say no. And spent the first, 10 of his stanzas talking about how special these teachings are, how rare, how hard to appreciate. He said they're what? They're like the tracks of a bird through space. Whew. Bird flies by, you don't see wing prints, but they're there. If you could see them, they're subtle, but they're there. The bird definitely went flap, 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 right through the air. The Dharma of the first of the 10 stages is as hard to appreciate as seeing the wing beats of a bird that has just gone by. So, none of that is here. Interestingly, it's just all missing, right? So, there are praises of the Bodhisattva. Let's find out. Here we go. Should there be people who do good deeds, whose behavior is immaculate, who give generously to those exalted by humans and devas, and whose steps walk the path of compassion, ones with extraordinary faith and understanding, whose intentions are pristine, as they seek the Buddha's wisdom, such people can make an unsurpassed resolve. They refine the power of omniscience and fearlessness as well. They master the Buddha's teachings and save the many sentient beings, so they can gain great kindness and compassion, to turn the sublime Dharma wheel, and to create Buddha lands. Such people can make the finest of resolves. Okay. Melodic verse. It's in our weekly series on the Zheng Dao Ge, Song of Awakening. We're just beginning the actual text. We've done a lot of the background on who was Master Yongjia, Master Shenjie, the master from Yongjia. What was he like when he met the sixth patriarch, their famous Dharma shootout at OK Corral, when they test each other. And not only does the sixth patriarch say, Ru Shi, you got it. Master Yongjia is, initially he shows up and he's rude. He's rude to the sixth patriarch, Master Huineng, who's holding the robe and bowl from the Buddha through Bodhidharma. And only after the sixth patriarch passes his test does Master Yongjia make full bows with perfect etiquette to show he totally knows how to do it, but he wasn't going to...
I don't see an app for that.
He wasn't...
need to download.
He wasn't going to do it because he didn't know whether the sixth patriarch was worthy of full respect. A little bit of arrogance there, but based on his own accomplishment. And when you look into the story, what you discover, interestingly, and this is testimony to one of the controversies in Zen and Chan studies. There are scholars who will tell you the sixth patriarch was a political creation from later years, that he didn't actually exist at all, say some scholars, trying to establish their reputation as being controversial. In fact, we've heard the story of the great poetry contest set up by the fifth patriarch, Master Hongren, at Yellow Plum, at Huangmei in Hebei. And he tested the layman from the south, the barbarian, who later became known as Master Huineng, the sixth patriarch. And in the process of testing, the monk at Yellow Plum, who everyone expected to win the contest, to the point where they didn't even try to submit a poem, Master Shanxiu, as you remember the story, Shanxiu has a nervous breakdown and gets his poem, his initial attempt gets rejected, which he engineered so that in case it was good enough, he could step forward, but fearing that it wasn't good enough, he could step back and still not be blamed for a faulty poem. So, there we go. So, in this process, Master Huineng wins the contest and goes into hiding for years. Master Shanxiu eventually goes north, and he, because the fifth patriarch organized the contest because he wanted to retire. It was time. And so he passed on the leadership of the monastery at Yellow Plums to someone else, the sixth patriarch, who in a better world could have left home and become the new patriarch. He had to hide because there was such tension around who had the robe and bowl, right? Those are the prizes. And they would kill you to get it. So, the future sixth patriarch flew out, disappeared. Master Shanxiu went on to lead a monastery and was a well-respected administrator and leader of the monastery. But here's my point. We read the biography of Master from Yongjia. He first went to visit Heng Sure to get to see whether he could be certified, whether his enlightenment could be recognized by a teacher, because that's how it was done. He went to see Heng Sure, didn't respect him, tested him, and discovered that Master Heng Sure was still caught in duality. So he came back to Wenzhou, where he was, and that was when the six patriarchs' recruiter, a monk whose name was Heng, heard about him, attended one of his sutra lectures, and said, you probably should go see my teacher. My teacher is down there in Nanhuasi in the south, and he can tell you whether you're enlightened or not. So the two of them, Master Shenjie, the master from Yongjia, was recruited, was headhunted, so to speak, by the six patriarchs' disciple, who had precisely gone out to find out whether there were any other potential candidates among the monks practicing in China. Well, he found one. It was Master Yongjia. So he took him back to Yellow Plums. That's why Master Yongjia walked in holding his staff and went dong, 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 and didn't even bow. Didn't bow. So the sixth patriarch was like, where are you from? You're really arrogant. And that's what begins their dialogue that people love so much, when the two of them, testing each other, discover the depths of their awakening. And sure enough. Okay, so we've been talking about all that. Now, in our weekly lectures, we've got to the actual text. And how does it begin? This is a song. It's a ge, Zheng Dao Ge, the Song of Awakening. And it begins the way you begin songs in traditional Chinese, which is you say, Jun bu jian, Jun bu jian, Jun bu jian, Jue xiao wei xian dao ran. So, Jun bu jian is what? It's a colloquial, it's a convention in Chinese letters, so in this case of the song, but it has a counterpart in balladry from Europe. So I'm going to, excuse me 1 second here. I'm going to set that aside and go here. Here we go, right here. Look at what we have in Western balladry. This is, so here it is, Jun Bujian. What do we have in the West? When you sing a song like Bob Dylan, what do you say? Come gather round, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, right? Come gather round, people. Come gather round me, people, a tale I'd like to tell. Gather round me, boys, gather round. Hear what I have to say. Come, all ye bold geographers. Look at, these are from ballads and minstrel songs from all over the United Kingdom. Oh, come listen to my story. 'Tis about such and such, right? Come, all ye lads and lassies fair, attend to my oration. I hope you'll hear me in my song and give me an ovation. Fill him up again, lads, they say. Come, all ye boys from Erin's Isle, and listen to my song. It's composed of multiple verses, and it won't detain you long. Okay, we have Dominic Bayon writing called The Patriot Game. Come, all you young rebels, and list while I sing. For the love of one's country is a terrible thing. It vanishes fear with the speed of a flame. Makes us all part of the patriot game, right? So come all ye, there it is. What do we have in the Zheng Dao Ge? Jun Bu Jian, literally, good sir, have you not seen? So-and-so. So Interesting. Now, what is it? This is a ge. It's a song, not a poem. It's master of Yongjia, master from Yongjia, was the leader of a monastery, I think it's Miaoguo Si in Wenzhou, for decades. And he heard all the monks as they washed their clothes. He heard them after lunch, washing their bowls, or before lunch, or out in picking the tea from the tea fields. And what do people do? They chant. They sing. They hum. They whistle. They put their thoughts into musical expression that has a ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. And he collected those into the Song of Enlightenment. Now, what we have with the Avatamsaka Sutra verses is a translation. This is from an original spoken by, sung by, some bhikkhus and bhikshus in India, carried to China, translated. We're looking at a musical form from thousands of years ago. And while our text does not say, "Come all ye young bhikshus and list while I sing," it doesn't say that. It's a musical form that has a history. And so what we're doing, we're introducing it to a new culture here in the West that has our own musical forms. We have a long history of taking expressions that we want to communicate and putting them in the air from my mouth to your ears. How are we going to do it? That's my question. Okay, so all of this is to say, we've got 46 verses. Look how long it goes, on and on and on, which is conveying what we have just been studying for weeks in prose. We've been studying the first stage of the Bodhisattva's training on the path to Buddhahood through the Bodhisattva path. It's now here in the West. Mind you, we're also being translated, thanks to the kindness of the volunteers, into Chinese and Vietnamese at the same time. But you doesn't have to say it's in the West, you could say it's in the 21st century, in the modern world. How are we going to convey it? That's our question. And I think the answer will be creatively. We're going to do it creatively. Okay, that's it for today with our sutra text. I've got something I want to share. As I mentioned, aware that we are in the midst of a nasty resurgence of, there we go, right there, of the virus. The Omicron variant is messing up. There are so many nurses who broke down. I was listening to reports from hospitals in the U.S., and the system has broken down this time, not with the beds are full, sure, but it's the staff that simply can't take a third round of this. And what do we have? What can we offer to support and strengthen and to appreciate those brave individuals who stepped up so that we would get through the crisis? Music is one of those things. So this is a song, as I mentioned, Janice Ian, dear musical friend, was doing her laundry, and the song came to her. She pulled out her old flip phone, still could record it on it, the tune, then put lyrics to it, and then handed it over to singers and musicians and artists as well, worldwide, and said, please do your version. If you go to bettertimeswillcome.com, you'll find 100 versions that are sung, played, painted, made into comic book, and then people videoed themselves doing it. It has become a global effort to keep people on track, keep our spirits up during a time of pandemic. So there it is. And we translated it into Mandarin here, thanks to volunteers' hard work. And we actually have a version in Chinese Sign Language, which is quite wonderful. Many hands at work. So this is a good one to learn. It actually makes things better when we can sing about the misery that we're facing. When we can put it into music, somehow the pain is less. Better times will come, better times will come. When this world learns to live as one, oh, better times will come. 明天会更好，明天会更好。世界和谐心大同，明天一定会更好。When we greet each dawn without fear, knowing loved ones soon will be near. When the winds of war cannot blow anymore, oh, better times will come. 面对困难毫不畏惧，亲朋好友不离不弃，高山路旁马放南山，明天一定会更好。Better times will come, better times will come. This world learns to live as one, oh, better times will come. Though we live each day as our last, we know someday soon it will pass. We will dance, we will sing in that never-ending spring, oh, better times will come. 生死转瞬一息之间，黑暗夜晚变幻百天，感恩心生大地回春，明天一定会更好。Better times will come, better times will come. When this world learns to live as one, oh, better times will come. 明天会更好，明天会更好。世界和谐心大同，明天一定会更好，明天一定会更好。Oh, better times will come. One can hope and sing too, better than just hoping, singing. Okay, now something came across my desktop that I wanted to share, something truly wonderful that deserves more attention, and that is Save the Bilby Fund is one, but it's my screen share video clip. Here it is right here. There is a movie, a short. It's 2 minutes and 26 seconds long. It's created by a 20-year-old, and it's filmed in Iran. I have profound affinities with the Persian culture of Iran, and so does Buddhism. There are many Buddhist translators who's got the surname An as monks, like An Shigao, who were from the aristocracy of Iran, Persia, traveled to China, learned their Dharma, learned their Buddhism, and went back and forth. That was one of the main stops on the Silk Road. Here we are. I'll tell you what it's about. We're going to watch it twice because when you hear the explanation, it really comes alive. Here we go.
آشنایان ره عشق در این بحر عمیق غرقه گشتند و نگشتند به آب آلوده.
همه شب در این امیدم که نسیم صبحگاهی به پیام آشنایان بنوازد آشنا را. الف بده حاجی.
اگر آن ترک شیرازی به دست دارد دل ما را.
حواست کجاست عزیزم؟ چرا قرمزه؟
اگر آن ترک شیرازی به دست دارد دل ما را.
آقا
جانم.
از اون کیکایی که اون دفعه دادیم بازم میدی؟
بله حتما. بابا جان بیا آقا بسن بیا. قول میده یه بهتر شدن. اینو بده به اون ماشین بغلیه. دست درد نکنه.
چی میگی پسر جون چی میگی؟ گل چی؟
بده ساقی می باقی که در جنت نخواهی یا کنار آب رکناباد و گلگشت مصلا را.
Okay, that's the film. Now, to appreciate it, you have to understand the custom of in married couples or couples in love to recite poetry to each other. It's part of being Persian is this love of Hafez. Hafez is just one of the defined. Everybody knows Rumi, but Hafez is equal. Different, but equal. And so the old gentleman, as the film begins, is reciting a poem to his beloved wife, and then she calls him Haji, which means he's been on the Hajj, he's been to Mecca. Then she recites back, and he continues. At that point, the plot thickens, and the car of quarreling young couple pulls up. And the old man, first of all, pays attention to the daughter, who is just so sad. And he's trying to make her laugh. And the next scene, the boy comes, and in traffic, where it stops at a red light, that custom is worldwide too. People gather around the cars. He's asking for a cake. So the old man obviously has done this before. He has his wife in the seat next to him is holding flowers. But he reaches down and picks up a cake and hands it to him, to the boy. The boy is happy. So there's another backstory, which is there's a custom in Iran of every month. There's a certain day when you go out to the cemetery to put flowers on the grave of your departed family members. He is on his way to the cemetery to put flowers on a very special grave. In this case, he takes the flowers, and the wife has this glow, her face. She hands him the flowers, and he says something that isn't translated. And in the comments of the video, they say, the translation is, "I'll get you some better ones later," he says. And he takes the flowers, calls the kid back, says, "Here, give these to the couple next to us." So the boy does it. The old man, the young husband is so angry, but the boy keeps knocking. "What do you want?" "Here, the old guy next to you here wants you to," the guy says, "Give it to your wife." With the wisdom of a long married couple, and stops the fight. The girl is so happy. Then the key scene comes back, you see the rose petals blowing away. The seat next to him is empty. His wife is in the cemetery. She's a ghost. He's just in the habit of reciting poetry to her so many times that he's visualized her back. He's going alone to the cemetery to lay flowers on his wife's grave. Beautiful film.
آشنایان ره عشق در این بحر عمیق غرقه گشتند و نگشتند به آب آلوده.
همه شب در این امیدم که نسیم صبحگاهی به پیام آشنایان بنوازد آشنا را. الف بده حاجی.
اگر آن ترک شیرازی به دست دارد دل ما را.
حواست کجاست عزیزم؟ چراغ قرمزه.
اگر آن ترک شیرازی به دست دارد دل ما را.
آقا
نه
از اون کیکایی که اون دفعه دادیم بازم میدی؟
بله حتما. بابا جان بیا. آقا بسن بیا.
I'll get you some better ones next time, he says.
اینو بده به اون ماشین بغلی. دست درد نکنه.
چی میگی پسر جون؟ چی میگی؟ گل چی؟
بده ساقی می باقی که در جنت نخواهی یا کنار آب رکناباد و گلگشت مصلا را.
Okay. That indeed makes the day better. Produced by a 20-year-old filmmaker. So, yeah, Iranian cinema is world class. I would like to invite the monks of the Berkeley Monastery, whose Chan session is over, to tell us a little bit about what's going to happen. Are you there?
Yes, I'm at Paul.
You're there. All right. Okay.
I don't think we've had a chance to really update the website too much yet, but
Okay,
we do have a couple announcements. So that has already passed. But
Okay.
essentially, all the events that we have put on hold because of the meditation session are started up again. So today we had a day of recitation with Heng Sure, and it will continue on. So 12 o'clock every day, we'll have a recitation of the Buddha's name, except on Friday when Heng Sure will be lecturing at 12:30 p.m.
Okay. Yeah.
Other than that, I think the classes are going to be starting up. Stephen Tainer's class is starting this Wednesday.
Yep.
Marty, I'm not sure when he will be starting his classes, so we will keep you posted.
Okay.
And Jim Forsh will continue his classes on Thursday evenings. Yep, that's
Okay. Yeah, maybe this week we can get the website spruced up for the winter semester.
Yeah.
And yep, great. Okay, all right. Meanwhile, I'd like to remind everybody about Dharma Radio and the chance to download some excellent spiritual music from Father Cyprian Concilio, Benedictine monk, in exchange for a good deed. You have to do a good deed, and just thinking about it. There we go. Okay, there it is. 3 songs from Father Cyprian. Spirit in the Cave of the Heart. Look at that beautiful art from Father Arthur Poulin. Good Karma Music. Click there. Do a good deed. And tell us what it was. And lo and behold, you can download your choice of Catholic and Buddhist spiritual music, which crosses over all kinds of boundaries. So, yeah, indeed. Please do look into dharmaradio.org. Oh, hit the wrong one. Let's bring up Medicine Buddha Mantra, and we'll transfer the merit. Hold on here. That's the one I want, right there. Transfer the merit. See you all next week for more of the Bodhisattva's first stage. Here we go. Vaidurya Pravarajaya Atagataya Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tadyata Saji Saji Saja Samugate Swaha Satya Guru Vaidurya Pravarajaya Tagataya Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Saji Saji Sadya Samugate Swaha. One more time. Om Namo Bhagavate Satya Guru Vaidurya Pravarajaya Tagataya Arahate Samyak Sambuddhaya Tadyata Saji Saji Sadya Samugate Swaha. May all beings recover from illness and disease. We have two images here. Invite you to join me in bowing. Bow 3 times to the Buddhas. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Well, that will do it for us this week. See you all next week. Amitofo. Bye, everybody.